Right. It could be another 10 days, right on the coast.
We were waiting. We're having another cheese in our
It's 7 o'clock on August 21st. I'll bring the Board of Selectmen's meeting to order, starting with the roll call from my right.
Paul Sanderson, Chester Duraki,
Ron Morgan,
Jim Ralston, Chip Uzzy.
and we have a quorum, and the meeting is being recorded. Okay, the first order of business is a public hearing to accept animal oxygen masks donated to the fire department by Miss Holly Novoleski.
Yep.
Would you like to,
Chief, do you want to speak on that for a second?
These are oxygen masks made for strictly animals, pets of all kinds, basically dogs and cats. And Novel Land said they would donate them. And the value of that was, I don't remember what it was.
She didn't tell us the value,
Yeah, it's pretty,
but we have 4 oxygen masks for animals.
they fit dogs and cats?
Yep.
Do you have one here? To see what one of those looks like.
I asked the chief if he wanted to bring one in, he says we don't
That's
need
probably
one.
a good idea. All right, I'll open the public hearing for any comments. Does anybody have any comments regarding acceptance of the oxygen mask? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing and ask for a motion.
Okay, I move we approve the acceptance of 4 animal oxygen masks for the fire department donated by Ms. Nublets.
Second. I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Okay, the next order of business is a public hearing regarding address changes proposed for emergency response reasons on Bay Shore Drive, Fairview Terrace, and Bayview Terrace. Before we start the public hearing, I'd like to make a few comments regarding the 9/11 changes and this hearing. I know the change can be difficult and inconvenient, but sometimes safety factors outweigh inconvenience. In the past, our police and fire departments, as well as other mutual aid departments, have had difficulty finding some addresses in times of emergencies due to similar street names and or out-of-sequence house numbering and having multiple residences on one driveway. This has caused delays in emergency response time, which this board realizes could cost somebody's life. When safety issues such as these are brought to our attention as a select board, we are obligated to remedy them. Therefore, pursuant to RSA 231:133 and 133A, we are making address changes to expedite emergency response time. I would like to make it clear this evening that this hearing is not about whether or not these changes will be made. The board has weighed the inconvenience versus safety factors and has determined that these changes will be made in the interest of safety. Rather, this hearing is being held to address comments and answer questions regarding what to do when your address is changed, i.e., post office, license, registration, deeds, Comcast, etc. We have with us this evening Chief of Police Tara Laurent, Fire Chief Ralph Cresta, Emergency Management Director
not here.
not here, and members of the 9/11 Commission here to answer any of your questions. And I'm going to, at this point, turn the meeting over to Chief Laurent, who will explain just what is taking place and how it's being phased in. Then the meeting will be open to public comments. Before you comment, would you please state your name and address for the record before speaking? Thank you. Tara?
Good evening. Nice that we have a packed house. Let me just start by explaining how this came to be, and then I assume that you'll have lots of questions for the board. Several years ago, I think it's been 4 years ago now, we got maps from 911. They come into different towns and they actually GPS where things are located in order to update technology. So they presented us with maps of where every road was, where every house is, where every driveway is. Wonderful, wonderful service that they are providing to all the towns in New Hampshire. Along with that map came a list of issues that do not match standardizing 911. So in other words, from long ago, you could have a Ham Street and a Ham Street extension, or have 5 houses off of a driveway. So all their addresses are this street that's off of it rather than the driveway. Things that standardization has really kind of done away with. So it came with a list of those. At that time, the fire chief and I, Ralph, we drove around to the town and looked at every single one of these. Was it confusing? Is it something that we've had issues with before? We drove around the entire town to actually look at these and take them into consideration. Then we met actually with our representative from the state, which is Jeannie, and she'll be here to answer your questions as well. And we sat down and we talked about which things we thought were either a priority or not as important. The state does not mandate that we have to do this, but the state makes strong recommendations based on what they've seen across the country, across the state, and in different communities. Once we did that, Ralph and I went to another community locally here that had gone through these changes. And we sat down and talked to their board and some of their town hall professionals and asked their advice and talked to them about what issues they had had. They really guided us in some of the things, and actually told us about a story where someone had called 911 right before they made these changes, so probably about 5 years ago now. Someone had called 911 for medical assistance, and they had the dispatch tape of this female officer, yelling into the radio because she couldn't find the house. And by the time the ambulance found it and the officer finally found it, unfortunately, the resident had died. Would she have died anyway? We'll never know. Sometimes with heart attacks and things like that, it's seconds that make the difference. We have probably 1 million of those examples, not that the result was death, but that it took us an extra minute or 2 minutes or 5 minutes to find a residence. And it plays through your mind when you're in our business, ambulance or fire or police, where that really could have been a big deal. So in discussing all of that, we came up with these changes that we have been slowly kind of muddling through for 3 years now, I believe. So hence we get to this one. Most of this area down where you all live are the bays. And we call them the bays because it's very confusing, not once you've lived here for a while or not once you've driven around as a full-time police officer for a while, but if you hire a new person, if you get a new volunteer driving the ambulance, if you ask mutual aid from Stratham, Portsmouth, Newington, wherever it happens to be, our dispatchers that are in Rockingham County who have never driven around Greenland, all of those, Bay Shore becomes Bay Ridge, becomes Great Bay, becomes Great Bay, all these bays. And as excited as we are to have the Bay, and I think everybody in here loves that we are the Bay community, that ends up being a real challenge that could lead to something heartbreaking. And whether that's police, fire, or ambulance, it's something that we don't want to have to live with as a community or as individuals that respond to those type of situations. So the recommendations tonight are mainly based on similar names. The bays, and then you'll notice Fairview, and we have a Fairway across town. So those are too similar as far as for 911 standardization and for what we've experienced here in this town. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. Jeannie is here. She can answer any of why the standardization came to pass and specific things. And Ralph also can tell you some examples if you're concerned with that.
Okay, I'll open the meeting for public hearing. Again, please state your name.
The name is Michael Genomatis. I live on Bay Shore Drive. And that was my first question. Do you have any examples to
this way?
We had a structure fire down on Bay Ridge, and it was a mistake made by one of our operators. They went to Bay Shore. I got down there, and the first thing that showed up was a tank truck, and it was just one of those things. It's very confusing when you get into the bays down in that area. So,
No, we do not use GPS. That question has come up a lot. Just so you know, it's not like we don't have GPS functionality like on our phones, etc. But if you're driving an emergency vehicle with lights on, getting information over the two-way radio, trying to find backup and get updates and drive well beyond the speed limit most of the time, if it's that pressing of a thing, GPS is not an option for us to look down and having to take the extra, even if it's 4 seconds, to type in Bayshore and do that kind of thing, especially if we're relying on mutual aid. Say I'm across town, I'm the only one on duty, so I'm asking Stratum. So you're already adding some time onto the response time because of that. So GPS, unfortunately, while it's the answer to finding everything else in a calm, normal manner, it can't be when you're driving an emergency vehicle.
I would like to add to that as well. Although there is GPS available, the example here was, well, they went to the wrong Bayshore with operator error. The way that the 911 system works in the state of New Hampshire is you call 911, it goes to the state call center, and then from there it's dispatched to the appropriate police, fire, or medical response agencies. And throughout that process, it's humans communicating these locations. Whether the mistake is made by the caller who's unfamiliar with the area and doesn't know the difference between Great Bay Drive and Great Bay Road, or it's on the 911 side where they misheard, or they're looking at their mapping software and they see 3 bays in one place and they say, oh no, which one was it? Or at the local level, it's not just putting a GPS location in, it's making sure that where you are and where that emergency is clearly understandable and isn't confused with another road name.
Aren't there are 911 enhanced 911 systems, not,
Oh,
Peter Kenner, 25 Bayshore Drive. There are 911 enhanced systems now that are available that are connected right to mapping systems. Do you not have that at the state level?
We do all of our mapping throughout the entire state. But again, especially in an area like this where it's congested with bays, errors do occur, unfortunately, and we're looking to try and prevent as much as we can.
I mean, it sounds ridiculous because everyone here who has a phone can put in Google Maps and you can go directly to any street in this town.
Understood.
Well, and so what you're telling us is that we don't have that capability at the state level, or the police can't put in Bayshore Drive.
When you were in kindergarten, you played the telephone game, right? So you call in.
It's not the telephone game. They have.
Wait a minute. No, but the person that you're calling, the 911 operator, has that map in front of them. Your best friend is there because you're having a heart attack, so he's calling in. So he gets your address right. Now the 911 person is looking at that. They have to call Rockingham Dispatch now. Rockingham Dispatch, we have a medical call at 25 Bayshore. Then they have to hear it, right? Look at their system, then call out on the radio. Greenland, do you have someone available? Because they're going to Bayshore. So there's 3 different places where that can get messed up. Then let's say everybody got it right, and now someone else is having a heart attack too, so our ambulance is out. Call Stratum, tell them to get Bayshore Drive. By the time you get down to the police departments, the fire departments, the ALS, all that stuff, we don't have anything in the car, and nor will we, because we have to drive 70 miles an hour to Bayshore Drive with lights, calling on backup, what's going on now, is there any dangers, is there any firearms, what's the status of this call? So I see how you see it as simple between, if it's here and here, A and B, absolutely. If there's no emergency, we can take time to say, now are you sure that's Bayshore Drive? Okay, hey, did you know Bayshore Drive? You go up here and it's the second left when you turn. If we have plenty of time, that's true too. But those aren't the situations we're concerned about. I have personally responded to a very, very serious situation on one of the bays that 2 of our officers went to the right bay and one of the officers didn't go to the right bay. And if that It couldn't, that could have gone really, really bad. Yes, ma'am?
My name is Pat Wolf. I live at 7 Bay Shore,
Okay,
and I have called 911.
okay.
I heard everything you say, and I realize lots of things can go wrong, but I can't tell you how impressed I was and how well and quick the response was. And
Good.
I have several neighbors that have also called with results that were positive.
That's
So,
terrific.
I
It's good to
think-
hear.
well, yes, it is, but I'd like not to see it change. I like the system. I think it's working.
It is working. I'm glad when you called that the Greenland officer or fire department or ambulance wasn't on another call and we weren't using Portsmouth or Stratham. Unfortunately, we're a small town, so most of the time you've got one officer on duty. And I think that, 90% of the time, if we changed nothing, everything would be great. But 10% is way too big for someone's life, because a heart attack literally is seconds.
What's the percentage now? You're
Of
saying
what?
10%, that's a huge percentage
It is,
when it comes to the medical field.
it is.
But in actuality, what is the real percentage? How many missed calls are there?
There's zero missed calls. It's just that how do you collect data on if it's delayed 10 seconds, 10 minutes?
But changing the name, going from person A to person B to person C, you can start with Seacrest, you can end up
Yep.
with Secor.
Yep.
And changing the name is not gonna make that change.
If there's no C in it, you don't confuse tiger with monkey.
Yeah, but
But
there's
Bay
only so
with
many
Bay.
letters in the
Sorry.
alphabet.
What?
There's only so many letters in the alphabet.
But there's a million words in the English language that don't sound anything alike. So I think we actually do, even if someone comes up with a name, we run it by to say, is it confusingly similar? Does it sound similar? Does it need, you know what I mean? So even names that people suggest aren't necessarily okay.
Judy Alex, 4 Bay Shore Drive. One of the basic questions I have is a lot of these streets have been named this for 35, 40 years, I don't know how long.
Right.
What is the difference now, between now and years ago? And, you were talking percentage of error. What was the percentage of error then? What was the percentage of error now? Is there a difference? Is it in the dispatch more so than actually?
Well, I think what's happened is we've gotten better and better over the years. But you say, what's the difference between then and now? It's like saying, what was the difference 30 years ago with medicine and treatment and 30 years to now? I mean, everything gets better and better, and that's another reason we want to change it. Because we want that error to be,
Well, I guess that's what I'm
plus or minus
asking
0.01.
is what percentage of error would there be regardless of change or no change?
Well-
There's going to be a percentage of error anyway.
Yes, but would you rather it be 10% or 1%? You're right, I don't have a figure of that, and I can tell you why I don't, because there is no way to track if we were 10 seconds late and did that make a difference? Was it an additional 3 minutes? And did it make a difference or didn't it? And even if somebody lives, the fire department is amazing and brings back people all the time. But even if someone lives, if we had been there 10 seconds earlier, would they have less side effects? Would it, we can talk in deaths or we can talk in quality of life, and it can be the whole, it'll never happen to me. But my officers and his employees live with the people that we lose. It is very, very difficult. We don't want to lose any citizens. We don't want any citizens to have anything severe happen to them. Unfortunately, we live in a day and age that's shocking things happen in Mount Vernon, in Hanover. Terrible. I hope I never respond to anything like that. But if someone is down or hurt or shot or something, we're the people that have to get to you within 0.01 seconds. I mean, we want to be there. So I have no interest in changing your road names or your numbers. There is no benefit to me or Ralph except to get there. I promise you that. I don't want to do anything inconvenient to you. I don't want I promise that I wouldn't be recommending this at all if I didn't think it would help somebody. And it may not be you in particular or you in particular, but there will be somebody that benefits from this. There probably already has been without us knowing.
Wanda Brulette, 17 Bayshore Drive. I'll have to say the most disappointing thing I've heard tonight is that it's changing. And I think we're all here thinking that we have a say, and we've had no say at all tonight. We don't get a say, and that's the most disappointing thing. My husband is a small businessman who has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of customers. It is going to be like nuts. I know that that's nothing to you in comparison to a life. I understand it. But I like cards on the table. Why couldn't you be honest when you sent your letter out saying, it's changing, this is the list of things you need to do? I mean, you've had us all come out here tonight. You can see we've had a good turnout. This is important to us. Who made the decision Bayshore over Bay Ridge? I want to know.
The Board of Selectmen made this decision because we were faced with a safety issue. Anytime the Board of Selectmen is faced with a safety issue, we have to respond to it. If we don't respond to it, this town could be held liable.
And I understand that.
And so,
Question.
It wasn't the question.
hold on.
It was, yeah.
But just hold
But you
on.
went around in circles, get to the point.
This has been going on now for a few years. I haven't seen the letter that's gone out. I thought the letter did say that this was
Recommendation.
Recommendation was not, it's happening. And I think that that's dishonest.
well, that wasn't meant to be
And
dishonest.
who made the decision Bay Ridge over Bay Shore doesn't get to get changed?
Well, nobody's made that decision just yet.
You just said it's changing. I see your
It's
data.
going to change, but nobody's made a decision as to what it's going to change to.
Bays, all the bays, it's 3 sections of bays.
No, I
So
understand
there are
that,
no
but
changes.
why pick Bay Shore over Bay Ridge or Bay whatever else?
Could you clarify what other
3 bays you're
They're all changing? Every single Bay Street is changing?
No, what was it? Great Bay, one of the Great Bays was saying.
Great Bay East and Great Bay.
No, those are on the list for changes.
Yeah, because that's
Yeah,
confusing.
and so is Bay Ridge.
Is Bay Ridge changing?
Yes.
I believe it is.
How about the way Great Bay Road diverges off of, and you have to
Yes,
continue?
we're addressing that as well. I mean,
Unfortunately, we can't fit everybody in one place at the same time, so it's being done in sections.
Might be nice if they were a little more open about this whole thing. It's been on the hush hush.
It's
And
dishonest.
you need to admit that. You're talking about changing all these roads now. We only know about where we are. We'd like to know what's going on in our town.
Did you ever hold a public hearing for this change?
We've held, that's what we're doing right now?
No, no.
No,
It's a done deal.
Yeah, it's a done deal. You
We're
already made
talking
the
about a
decision.
public hearing before you decided to make the change.
I don't think we need to hold a public hearing on that.
No, this is the public hearing, and
No, this is not.
Selectman Morgan did say, like, this is what we're going to do. At the
So
next
it's not-
public hearing,
it's
the
useless
board
to-
then has to vote as a board to agree to it, with a new name or not. We've had
There
people.
are public hearings.
Right, and we've had other examples that people said they came in for their street and their street was changing, but they said, my house really it fronts on that street, so I should keep my address because of the way I'm located. And they went down, took a look and said, yes, you're right. The way your driveway is, you keep your address.
What streets are
Change the
changing?
other one.
we've
Paul
gone,
Heenan, 28 Bay Shore. What streets are changing?
Excuse me?
What streets in the town of Greenland, New Hampshire, are changing?
a great majority of them. We've been through 3 years of it, 8 phases
Got a list?
already. I'm sure I can come up with a list of everything
I'd like
we've
to see
done.
it.
And then this is we still have the other bays, we still have several other sections
Well,
to
what-
address. It'll be for years.
Well, why is there so much confusion in Greenland? I've got property elsewhere and it's small towns.
Yep,
And
maybe they haven't gone through it yet, or maybe
well, they
they,
just went to the 911 system and one of them.
we
And,
were with the 911 system before we decided to take the standardizations. So, yeah, there's a lot of towns that haven't done it yet, there's a lot of towns that have. Obviously, the East Coast and New Hampshire and Massachusetts are some of the worst because we were settled so long ago. So a lot of our roads existed and then they would just add a little bit or change a little bit. So, if you go out west, their standardization process is very small because they've already gridded everything out. So,
Tina Rockefeller, 6 Bay Shore. I am curious about some of your thought processes in going through and deciding, because I hear you're talking about safety issues, which of course is important, but I don't think any of us have heard much detail in terms of what considerations you gave to the various changes. And then following up on Mike's point, I work in Dover, so there's a Mount Vernon Street, a Mount Auburn Street, there's a 1st, 2nd, 3rd.
Right.
Hampton has 1st through 18, A through Z, B, C. I mean, so hearing Bay Shore is very different to me from Bay Ridge and Bayside. And I'm curious how other municipalities, I mean, C and B, Hampton Beach is certainly very confusing, and maybe you're going to tell me they're changing all of them. I just haven't heard that. So it would help me if I heard a little more about your deliberative process.
Sure, I would love to speak on that. So, as far as Hampton goes, it's up to each municipality to decide whether or not they want to accept, review, or change addresses or street names based on 911's recommendation. When we analyze the addressing scheme in a town, unfortunately, we don't take convenience into consideration. We base all of our recommendations on New Hampshire 911's recommended addressing standards, which are based upon a national standard by it's NENA, the National E911 Number Association. And these are recommendations based on best practices. We've gotten better at figuring out where the problems are with addressing. What is causing delays? What is potentially dangerous? And again, like I said, each town or city can elect to accept our recommendations and move forward. Now, some communities will take only the most egregious issues and move forward on them and change them. Others may not. So it really is the town's authority, and state law does provide them with that authority to make these changes to comply with the 911 system. So Dover, for example, is in the process of being mapped. They have not been, their mapping project has not been completed by 911 yet. But there are numerous communities that have had their projects completed and have also completed their addressing changes.
So I thank you for the general information, but that's not the specific information for Greenland. Thank you. Right?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, perhaps,
No, go ahead.
again, perhaps,
Bay Ridge Road, 19 Ridge Road. I appreciate the safety, but my question is, what is the learning curve for somebody to understand that Fairview is now peanut butter, and they've never heard of Peanut Butter Drive, and Bay Ridge is marshmallow? And how long does it take to retrain everybody in the community, and what is your delay time when somebody's finally saying, I don't know where peanut butter is, I've never heard of that?
how do they find it?
Yeah.
No, they can't.
So Google it. How does
I'd like an
GPS
answer
find
to
it?
my question also, if possible.
Sorry, Tina, that's okay.
I
I was just going to say, I thought the chief would be able to best answer Tina Rockefeller's question, because you and Chief Cresta have been the primary proponents of it for the last 3 years, so you could explain the process that you've done with all the different board members, because not all of us have been here for that entire 3 years, and explain why you're proceeding as you are.
As I said in the beginning, that's absolutely true. We went through a process to get where we were. And it was anecdotal when we sat down about all the times that we went to the wrong place or were delayed because of that. And then you added to it every time that we call on mutual aid, all the times that they were, unfortunately, more delayed, because it's already delayed when we call someone from Stratham or Portsmouth. So then it adds on to that delay considerably. So that's why we have done everything we can to make sure that our people are responding to cut down on that as much as possible, especially Ralph with relying on Portsmouth for different things. And that's greatly reduced over the last couple of years. So the process of going through, and you say that Bay Shore sounds very different than Bay Ridge, but if you are not full-time, he has a lot of volunteers, or you are new, or, for instance, I have officers that have been on for 18 years that go down and aren't sure exactly where Great Bay Road becomes Great Bay Drive. And so it just, I can see how living here for so many years is, you don't understand how people can't know it, but we pull people from every other community as well as our own, plus we hire new people. To answer on the learning curve of it, it's the same thing as officers. We don't let them out of a field training program until they know the roads in Greenland. But that still doesn't speak to Stratham, Portsmouth, Newington, all those places.
And how do they find where they're going? Excuse me for interrupting. I mean, if you're not using GPS,
Stratham and them,
yeah.
they rely on dispatch, looking at the map and saying, okay, you're going to take your second left, you're going to do this, you're going to do that.
Doesn't that speak to human error though?
There is human error, absolutely, but especially when it's Bay Shore, Bay Ridge, Great Bay, all those things, they start to run together for those that aren't familiar with our community. And
Go ahead, Jean.
Jean Eno, 28 Bay Shore. So I'm going to turn all my questions that we were invited to bring to the table tonight into comments. To me, this is boiling down to dispatch operation. I've read some of the minutes in the past. It was a dispatch error that led to something rather significant in town. Whether that was Bay Shore or not, I don't know, but that was a question. Where on Bay Shore has this happened? I'm going to go back to a question. We've been there 16 plus years. I did a quick survey of some fellow neighbors who have been there a whole lot longer than that. We were hard pressed to come up with any instance of where there was any kind of emergency service problem on our road. That aside, going back to a dispatch operation concern, how are they trained specifically? And if it's just dispatch, I would say that then they need to be updated with their mapping systems, and maybe they need to have two people sitting in front of those counters. Maybe that jumps to the state and we can't control that here. But I think of when I was a teenager, preteen, when I was handed a brand new paper route. I had more than 50 roads and I needed to know every single house on those roads that took a paper, never mind the ones that didn't, and so forth and so on. Those roads got memorized. Are our municipal servicers made familiar with our roads? Do they actually drive around and see where these roads are? I find it really hard to believe that Bay Shore is a problem.
I had a very, very difficult call on Bay Shore. And the only reason I don't want to be specific about it is I'm not sure if a family member's in the room, and it was not something small. So it was.
Well, we have to put in Bay Shore.
Did you go to Bay Ridge?
One officer went to Bay Ridge, yes.
But two officers went to Bay Shore.
Right. This was not a two-officer
So
call.
that wasn't operation, that was.
Listen, I totally understand what you're saying, and I feel for it, but.
I'd like to just finish. We know you're driving home this fear factor safety issue big time. We're all aware of the fact that nobody wants to be 10 minutes behind the 8 ball with a life-saving call.
Right.
But the fact is that how can there be less risk in changing these names all over the place because we have new people coming in who aren't familiar with those streets? The risk factor, in my mind, has to be far greater with changing those names.
And it's not. We have one that we changed probably 2 years ago. The new name is Rue de Aquitaine.
What?
So, yeah, that's what they wanted.
Is that a private drive? Is that a private way? Or public road? Private road or public road?
It's private.
Yeah, all these private roads.
Listen, so we let people name them. I guarantee you, anybody can get down to Rue de Aquitaine. Why? Because it is not similar to anything else. It is on its own. And I understand the paper route.
It's a training issue.
You're examining apples and oranges. My paper route is not
Comparing
moving.
apples and oranges.
I'm sorry?
You're comparing apples and oranges. You're comparing the dispatching to the names of the roads. Doesn't make sense. Your dispatching needs to.
If my dispatcher says Bay Shore,
Yeah.
the officers sometimes will go to Bay Ridge.
Why?
Well,
That needs to be
Don't
addressed.
blame that on Bay Shore.
I'm sorry, but when it is an emergency situation, which I hope none of you ever experience, that is something that happens. It is called tunnel vision. You don't hear as well, you don't see as well, and unfortunately, it's something that we go through all the time. It's not like a paper route. It's not like memorizing. It's not like what you're thinking is, how am I going to get the bad guy down, or how am I going to get into the house if it's locked and they're having a heart attack? It's all those things.
Yes, go ahead.
Jessica Merrick, Fairview Terrace. So if we now have Peanut Butter Way and we have Marshmallow Way, and no one's heard of them, how do we make sure that Google, MapQuest, Apple Maps, all of them have updated them so people can find them, because people's houses are marked. So either their driveway is, 40 feet into the woods and there's no marker and it's hidden behind trees or bush that is town owned. How do we then find the roads? So there's multiple problems. And how do we address that? Is that going to be multiple steps for the town to approach? How does Apple Maps and Google Maps all divide?
911 submits updates to Google, Bing, TomTom, etc. after each address conversion, and also on a semi-annual basis.
So that's going to be in the next 3 months? So by
I believe
February,
that the effective date is
until
January.
We need to wait a whole year. If we're going.
Well, Marshmallow Way doesn't exist legally until January 3rd, 2018. So we won't be submitting data that is false before then. So once the date of this comes upon us, we submit our data then, and it is up to these agencies to accept our data and put it in their system.
So it could take up to 6 months.
I can't speak for Google, unfortunately, but I can speak for what we
I'm
would do.
from Post Road, you can kick me out if you want to, but my name is Steven Gerardo, and I just have a couple of questions. Do we spend money on this? It costs money, the town spends money. Do we have an appropriation, because I never saw anything in any of the town meeting.
Yes, we do. We have an
It costs
appropriation for sign.
And we voted on that?
Yeah.
The gentleman over there mentioned that it would have been better if, instead of jamming it down our throat, wouldn't it have been better to bring it in as on a warrant article or something to get the whole town to vote on it?
Again, what I can tell you is that if we brought every single item up,
No,
to
just
vote
the
on,
whole
that's why
program.
we've got, that's why
Just the
you've
whole
got the
program,
Board of
Bob.
Selectmen here, but the Board of Selectmen is responsible for the safety of the town. This is why we are changing this. It wasn't all of this board, but every board that we've had here has been on board with the safety issue on this. And I understand the fear factor thing. We're not trying to scare people, but these things do happen. And I understand where you're coming from, because I had to change mine. I had a business too. And I had to change my business cards, I had to change my letterheads, I had to do the whole thing.
How
as you
many
did,
hundreds
too.
of people did you have to notify?
I didn't have hundreds, but I had about
Hundreds.
75.
We're talking hundreds, but I would like for you to take a look, I would like you to take a look at the people that are in this room today.
Mhm.
I would gather to say, everybody's over 50. Anybody under 50 here besides Jessica? No? So, I think that our voices should be heard. If it's a safety factor, we're concerned. We're all over 50. Please take that into consideration. We don't want our road to change.
I think just under the auspices that there's a potential for reconsideration, I propose that the more confusing area of Greenland's bays, that's Great Bay and Great Bay East and West and Bay Ridge, which is off of Dearborn, which is a continuation of Great Bay, you get my point. That those perhaps are your likely candidates for improving for safety. And that means Bay Shore does not have to be changed because it's off of Caswell, off of Bayside.
Pretty easy.
Was there
The lesser of the burden comparing residences.
Okay.
it's hard, nobody wants to change their address, and I think that everybody's sensitive to it, but my question, is there a comprehensive assessment of the whole town, or are you doing it piecemeal? Because it seems if you do it piecemeal, then you run the risk of more confusion, and I don't know, maybe you have done it, and maybe this is all being done at once, but how can you not do it all at once?
I think it's a capacity issue as far as doing it all at once. And we did analyze the entire town, and it's being broken up into sections. The first section was shared driveways. Driveways servicing more than 2 addressable structures were named and readdressed off of that newly named drive. And then we looked at out-of-sequence addressing, or odds and evens on the wrong side of the road, and we remedied those. And unfortunately, the chief and I spoke about this, we knew that this would be a very difficult group to start in on, because it is a large number of people, it's in a very established community, and I think that everybody may have some attachment to their road name. It's familiar, it's what you've known. So unfortunately, we had to break it up into piecemeal, but this isn't the only section of the bays that's going to be affected. You just happen to be the first group.
So you're not looking at all the bays simultaneously?
We've looked at them, reviewed them, but we've broken them, these public hearings, into groups that would hopefully fit in this room.
Are all the bays changing?
Yes. And as a resident of Bay Ridge, I feel for just the way all of you do, and I know it's coming for me too.
Why can't you keep one of them?
Right, that was my
I
question.
think we should keep it Bayside.
Leave the one alone.
You keeping Bayside?
Okay, go
I
ahead.
thought there was one that was being kept, but it was the
I-
town's decision which one to keep.
I'm not sure which one it is.
I'm not sure either at offhand.
Okay.
There had been a discussion.
All I can tell you is Bay Ridge will get it too, just not today, but very soon. I think it's your plan to do it this year.
Yes,
So the reprieve is very short.
I think she had a question.
Go ahead.
Same question, Diane Fleming, St. Bay Shore. Are any of the bays being retained?
I think we are keeping one, I'm not sure which one it was. We had a discussion. Ultimately, the Board of Selectmen will decide which one. I think it goes by the number of residents on that street. So that might be, I'm not sure.
Was it Great Bay Road?
We had to talk about that weird intersection with DOT, so that was on hold.
Go ahead.
Ron Roulette, 17 Bay Shore Drive. I probably produce 5,000 to 6,000 pieces of mail a year, maybe more, maybe it's much more than that. But how long is the post office going to forward my mail to the new address from my address present? I deal with companies all over the nation, and some of them I deal with on a really infrequent basis, so for me to get my information to them quarterly or semi-annually, I'm a window cleaner, so we deal with a lot of nickel and dime stuff. And
I can tell you
it's
that
going to be a mess. It's going to be a mess for me, business-wise, and Paul and the guys that run businesses in here. I mean, I know that that's maybe secondary, obviously, to people's safety and stuff, but I mean, it's going to be a mess. 23 years on Bay Shore, 40 years in business, and I have to call hundreds and write them notes and letters and readdress and readdress. How long is the post office going to continue to forward my mail?
Forever.
No,
Okay.
I can tell you that's not the case.
I spoke with, according to the postmaster in Portsmouth, that they guarantee a year. When communities are going through this type of change, then they guarantee 2 years. And he said, but realistically, we will never take that out of the system.
I mean,
Except for magazines. Magazines and periodicals do fall off.
I mean, my office changed and they don't forward it after a year. It's a big problem.
I don't know if it changed because of something like this, and maybe that's the difference. I can tell you that the town hall changed, the police department changed, all of that stuff. And, you know, has it been a year? Probably almost exactly a year since we changed. And yes, I still get mail, both addresses, and I expect I will for a long time.
It's going to be a mess, because I'm telling you, I've been doing this 40 years. This has been my life for 40 years. And I've got to give a new address out to hundreds and hundreds of people that are all over the country. And what a mess it's going to be. Let alone just my address labels and my business cards, as you know, Mr. Morgan. I mean, what a mess it's going to be for little guys like me, little business guys. Oh, go ahead.
Judy Alex again, 4 Bay Shore Drive. There was a comment made here by Jean, that I don't want this to slip under the radar. I think it's something worth looking into. She talked about dispatch, okay? I've had many experiences calling 911 from my mom. Instantly came. When there was a change to wherever it's coming out of now, I recently had a pretty significant tragedy at Bayshore Drive. And my experience with the dispatch was horrendous. Horrendous. That is where I believe thoughts, processes, looking into should either go or go as well. What happened with me was I felt like I was listening to someone who was reading a script that they were supposed to, say. I was in a panic situation. All I could get out of my mouth was for Bayshore Drive. I made it very clear many, many times until I had to hang up because I had to deal with what I had to deal with, and I also had to make other calls to get family or whatever here. Tara, I don't know if that's what you were referring to, where one officer went, and a few seconds, a few minutes, it would not have changed the outcome. However, my experience with the dispatch, I cannot tell you how furious I am because of that. It was very upsetting.
Dispatch does not occur here in Greenland. That goes out to Rockingham County.
Maybe that's where they need to be.
I feel that
So
is.
changing the names is gonna fix the dispatch?
Not at all. They're still gonna screw it up.
Okay, go ahead, Ms.
They will.
All right, excuse me, please. We want to listen to the gentleman.
I'd just like to echo what Judy said, because I'll give you two examples that I personally witnessed. In Portsmouth, in I think it was October of last year, a woman was in the parking lot at the Portsmouth post office. She was trying to navigate. She must have slipped her foot off the brake, hit the gas. She went like a bullet, like I've never seen before. Climbed up a huge bush tree. The car was still spinning. She was just in shock. I called 911 because I witnessed it. 15 rings. I got conquered. Told them what the story was. They said, "You need Portsmouth." I said, "Fine." They got me Rockingham. Rockingham said, "You need Portsmouth." I said, "I know that." I got Portsmouth, and they yelled at me. They said they were dealing with a grass fire. So I said, "Okay, well, when this car starts to burn, we'll call you back." And then in this town, and I think the chief knows about it. We have people that are shooting pistols and weapons. So, and Judy knows about this, and we keep hearing them. So I called. It was a Saturday afternoon. I called 911. I got Rockingham County. I told them what was going on. I said they wanted a complete description of where it was and everything. I said the officers know they've been there. No, we need it for our records. So they called supposedly, and I waited outside 45 minutes. Then I called again, and Sergeant Kirkland, was that? Yes. He finally showed up, and he said, "I got one call." And so he said, "What number did they call?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "We have a special emergency number." I said, "Maybe they don't know that." So I think there is some issues, and I'm glad people up in the state are here and the representative, because I think 911 is a great thing, but I think the process may be shy on training. Personal opinion.
I certainly hear you, and it sounds like there may have been some experiences that you're certainly welcome to come and speak with me about afterward. I can direct you to the right person to talk about that with. But 911 telecommunicators, they go through 12 to 16 weeks of just classroom training before they're side by side with a trainer. And it's constant review of their calls. Each call is recorded, stored, and they're not let out on their own until they are appropriately trained. But again, we are all human. And as much as I don't want to say that people make mistakes, they do. And I think in any profession, somebody is prone to mistakes. Unfortunately, in public safety, a mistake can be a very big deal. And so we look to minimize any risk. And part of that is the addressing, part of that is training. And unfortunately, we can't control it all. But
I
it,
just want to share.
sure.
It's awful experience.
Okay, go ahead.
Ann Mayer, 3 Fairview Terrace, we've been there for 32 years. And I have to say that I think as well that there's probably a problem with the dispatching. And I am concerned that if we go through this whole process of changing the names, that may not help us with the 911 calls, whether it's 10 seconds or 10 minutes. We've never had a problem in the 32 years in calling the police for family emergencies, but we also moved to this town when it was a much smaller place, and the chief of police actually had our address on the dash of the cruiser. And he knew if he got a phone call, it was our baby on monitor. So it's a different world. But my question is, we're going to have all of these names changed when we're still confused about how many bays and Fairviews, Fair Drives. They were named by town representatives over the last 50 years based on the geography where we live. So we're not going to name it Marshmallow Terrace, and we're not going to name it Peanut, but who's going to establish when we live in areas that look at the same kind of geography, that we have names that describe or hope to describe in some pleasant way our addresses? And we may run out of some vocabulary.
Well, you could have Winnicott
So I wanna
Marsh
know
on
how
one
this is
side
gonna
and
happen.
Shelburne Marsh on the other side. Anybody game?
Well, one of the things we do in the second public hearing is to ask everybody that's concerned here if they would come up with some names for the new streets. We have some suggestions that we have here, but we'd like to have the people that are concerned bring up the names that they would like to see the streets changed to. So we do that in the second public hearing. And I believe me, I understand the inconvenience. I really, really do. But the board has acted together in the interest of safety, and this is the direction that the board is going to take. I'd like to ask if anybody has any questions regarding, your licenses, your mortgages, your, deeds on your homes and things like that, because we have answers to those questions too.
I think most of them were letters that went out to you, most of that.
Well, it was very detailed.
All right, go ahead.
No, that's the second letter.
So no questions related to that, I have a question. Is it the case where the street name and the number are going to change?
In some cases, yes.
And why is that required? And is that discretionary on the part of the board?
Part of the thought process with the renumbering, in addition to the street name change, is that when we've made changes, they've been based on a very standard 50-foot increment. So every 50 feet, there's an odd and even number available. Throughout Greenland, there's a lot of lot-based numbering, which means if your parcel has 200 feet of frontage, and you've got number 1, you've got another 150 feet to the next house, and then there's a number 3. It's very erratic throughout the town, and we're looking to kind of make the parity of the numbering a little more predictable, the distance between the numbering a little more predictable. Part of that is due to response, but also when you're switching to a 50-foot increment as far as numbering goes, you do allow for development in the future to occur. And we hear a lot of, well, you can never subdivide and you can never build here. But unfortunately, as the years go by, we do subdivide, we do build here, and now we're out of numbers. So what's the solution? And the solution a lot of times is to use like a 1 and a 1A or a 1.5. And these are very non-standard numbers that can lead to misconception by responders that they're looking for an apartment or a secondary residence on a property or something along those lines. So part of the numbering is to kind of prepare for the future and also make the current numbering predictable. And rather than just change your names and then potentially run into a situation where you're lacking numbers, We'll do it all at once.
Yeah, but Greenland, like, Bay Shore is never gonna have a sewer system, ever. I mean, so it's like, you have to have the 200-foot frontage because of your septic system. You're not gonna have a 50-foot frontage unless you're doing a development where you have a common septic system for 20 homes, like Eaton Drive or, you know, I mean, Bramber's different because they've got a.
I just wanted to say that I think that one of the most confusing things, probably to responders, delivery men, is, for example, I live at 17 Bayshore Drive, okay? There are 4 mailboxes on the border of my property. Mailboxes from people who are across the street. We have the Weavers, we have the Brick House, I don't know their name, I apologize. We have the newly being redone, Aizen's old house, you know, is on my property, and then mine's on my property. So I think that when people are trolling through the neighborhood, that is more confusing than any street name.
And were the mailboxes there when you moved in?
Yeah, they're
X
still
number of years
there,
ago?
and they're still there.
It's just for the convenience
Yeah,
of the mail carrier.
The mail carrier,
Understandable.
but they're boxes for people who are across the street from me. So as people are trolling through, that's what they're looking at. They're looking at these mailboxes. They're not looking at the house address. They're not caring about the street name. They're looking at mailboxes, and I think that's very confusing.
I understand Thomas Bates, 11 Bay Ridge, Burnett. The question is, in areas that are fully built, they meet or exceed current zoning but cannot be subdivided. Are you suggesting as a town that we can't say that where the lot meets zoning, that zoning laws get superseded by, someday the town's going to change us from an 1.5 acre lot to 1 acre, and I'm 1.5 acres, and I'm going to be able to subdivide? Where's the acre that I can subdivide to? Bay Ridge is fully built out. There's no way a lot could be put in there. There's no way that we could go to sewer and put a lot in there. What's the justification for having to change the numbers as well?
Not with current zoning laws, but we're talking, we say never, we mean never in our lifetimes.
Yep.
If you look 50 years in advance, or even, 80 years, and we don't know what it's gonna look like at all.
It's gonna be water.
Oh,
It's gonna be
it could be. It really could be. And we might have aqua houses, I don't even know. But I think that's the idea behind it, that if we're changing the names anyway, then isn't that the time to change the numbering? As far as that, I feel like the safety is a little bit less. It does take it so you know when to expect another number, but that's neither here nor there.
So there is some discretion in that. And would you say that as a commission, you'd be willing to consider that separate from your decision to automatically change the bays, as you have said already that you have already made that decision?
Okay, I pretty much, I'm going to rely on my 9/11 commission. However, I understand what you're saying. You make a good point. I would have to mull that over with the board. I can't make a decision on it, but
Yes, I do agree with you. I saw no reason to change the numbers on that road. I don't know about Bay Ridge, but I know Bay Shore, Fairview, and Bayview. There's no reason to change those.
Bay Ridge actually has the numbers already staggered.
I haven't driven Bay Ridge, so I couldn't tell you to do that. Actually, when this came out, I actually drove down the road to see if there was any problems, and we could avoid have causing hate and discontent. When that was one of them I noticed on this particular
Maybe hate, but not discontent. Appreciate that.
so your answer is yes.
I appreciate that flexibility.
Okay, I'll take one more. We have other people coming in for another meeting. Ladies before gentlemen. Go ahead.
Thank you.
I'll let you speak too.
Kate Be Sure. What is the issue with our deeds at the county?
Deeds do not need to be changed until they're transferred. So only if you are selling the property, it changes automatically at that time. Because on record here at the town, we'll have the lot address and the map address, and it will refer to both addresses. So it does not need to be changed. There's nothing legally that you have to do.
Do you have to trade, if your property is in a trust?
You do not have to change that. until it transfers from the trust.
Just so I'm clear, on the multicolored slide, like we're number 3, Fairview, is that now going to be number 18, Fairview?
Yes.
Not Fairview, but number 18, whatever.
Whatever, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's Spit Road or something.
Yes. The specific problem with the numbering on
They're
Fairview.
Road 2, we'll be Road 1.
Yep.
And then Road 3. That's easy. Stupid, but it's easy. Okay.
What's meeting two? I'm sorry to interrupt, but you said a second hearing? I missed that.
There's a, excuse me?
I missed that. I didn't understand that part of the procedure. You said there's a second hearing?
There's a second, the next meeting, the next selectmen meeting will be a second hearing where we will discuss what to name the new roads, the old roads.
So you have decided.
We have decided.
Okay, so now we're back to that again. Okay.
Yeah. So,
There
right,
are
one more.
restrictions on roads, like anything we can't name them or any type of, like restrictions, so if we're looking at names to make them,
Right.
what can we do, what can we not do?
It can't be anything that's similar to whatever's already existing in town. No duplicate.
I guess I would want to know, what bay are you not going to change before we go through all of this? I mean, it makes no sense to change Bay Shore when the confusing roads, as we all know they are down to the west. And if Bay Shore is not going to change, why are we wasting our time?
Because it's going to change.
No, there's one bay that's not going to change.
Yeah,
Which bay is that?
It's not ours, believe me.
Is it not Bay Shore Drive? Which bay, is Bay Ridge not going to change?
I would think Bay Ridge would be the one that wouldn't change, because that's got the most people.
Bay Ridge is on the list to change.
And that's got a lot of people.
So which bay is not changing?
Hold on one second.
Because you need to know why they picked why they
Don't call Bay Shore Marshall Drive.
I get
So are you gonna do this communication more times with other areas? Like, wouldn't it be better to go to school and just do a huge meeting? So you don't have to say this.
The problem with that is that we wouldn't be able to address, there'd be so many different reasons that people's things were changing, so we wouldn't be able to address the concerns
I
of
just don't have
that.
for you guys. This is a lot now.
No, but it's a done deal, so that's why it should have been in the school.
So Tara, do we
Yeah.
know?
I'm trying to find it.
Go ahead while she's looking.
Can you give me the names that you came up with?
Is there anyone here from
Yes.
Bayside? That's the one that's not changing.
Okay.
These are just suggestions.
This is only one set.
Yeah, well, they're not gonna change that one, that's the longest one.
Okay, you read them out loud. You read them?
You want to hit this?
Yeah, we want to hear what they're saying.
We get the.
No. No, they said the large recommendation. You get to name
These are the name changes, possible name changes for us. Francis?
Oh, no.
What is this?
Wait. These are not, whoa, these are not, these are possible names if you can't come up with your own.
These are
There has
Chaperone, he was the founder.
This person settled in.
Chaperone. Don't kill the messenger. Abenaki. Canary. Oni. Judge.
Say that one after Canary.
Oni. Judge.
These were just names.
Strawberry.
Peanut butter in there?
No, peanut butter's not. Keniston and grist, as in milk.
So in other words, we're not going to go with those because we're going to come up with a name because it's been decided that Bay Shore is changing. So let's all come together and pick a name
I don't think any of those are true.
that's relevant to our geography.
Could it
How about fabulous marshes? Live on the shore, right there.
Go ahead. Tara? Oh, you're still looking.
They can make
So basically, probably the road that wouldn't change would be the road with the most residents on it. That is logical to me. I don't quite know which road that is just yet.
Bayside.
Bayside.
Okay. So anyway, we do have, we have another group of people coming in here, and I appreciate you're all coming, I really do.
What's the date of the next meeting?
The next
2
meeting,
weeks
the next
from tonight.
election?
No, 2 weeks from tonight.
2 weeks from
No,
tonight.
We're actually
All right.
meeting that Tuesday, September 5th, because Monday is Labor Day. So the meeting, the second meeting, the next meeting for this is Tuesday, September 5th.
7 o'clock?
Yes.
7 o'clock, right here. Yeah.
I just have a
Go ahead.
legitimate question. Are there still going to be 3 roads? Or are they going to be the same road with different numbers off of them? Now we have 3 roads, Bay Shore,
Yes.
Fairview, and Bayview. Are they all going to be one road with different numbers?
No.
Okay, so we have to come up with 3 names.
Right.
So the people on Bay Shore can come up with a name for Bay Shore.
Maybe you have to change if that's the case.
Yeah, I know.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you coming tonight. I'm going to close the public hearing and look forward to seeing you at the next meeting.
I don't think I have
Yeah, like, here, September 4th, can we give our names to like whoever we want? Usually they're emailed here. Okay, so we'll email them to Karen. Yeah, we're not gonna be here. Anderson@greenland-NH.com. So the email, at least, something, so I'll talk to our two people. And then email my term.
I know.
No offense, I'm not a fellow messengers, I've been there, however, this is ridiculous. And the next time 911 comes to my house and I'm already dead. You know, I think we're trying to solve a problem that can have other
Yeah.
I've got enough.
All right.
Your mother, I think.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from August 7th. Does anybody have any?
I have comment, I didn't listen to see what I actually said.
I did.
I certainly
Thank you, Karen.
Yes, okay, page 6, the last paragraph, it has in here, it says CIP is actually CPI, it was Consumer Price Index.
Okay?
Yes.
Okay.
I read that 3 times, I read right over it.
Any other comments on the minutes? I'll entertain a motion. Chip?
That's where it's at.
I'll move that we approve the minutes as amended.
Second.
I have a motion, a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, next item is old business, the Copley update. I believe we have Miss Cheryl Vermette.
Yes,
Oh, here you are. And you're from 21 Stone Meadow Way?
yes, yes, sir.
And you like to,
I just wanted to talk about the water update. That basically, I know there's been several articles in the paper, and that when my husband came to the town office to recycle his license plate, he was told that the latest was the pump station, and that if that went through, that we were not going to get city water, as had been put in with between Greenland and the town of Portsmouth to get us public water through that lawsuit with ExxonMobil. And I've asked several times, and I've been told that, well, maybe we should know something definitely by September. So then I spoke to several people, and one thing that there was an editorial in yesterday's paper, and one thing that was stated, and if you allow me, I'd like to read this paragraph. And it said, the Superfund record of decision provided costs for 4 source control alternatives, including the natural attenuation of $1,412,000, 2 options for a pump and treat system, ranged in price from $2,067,000 to $3,232,000, in total cost over 30 years in $1,993. Natural attenuation, however, required deed restrictions on properties around the landfill to ban the use of wells, which did not happen. And all of us in Stone Meadow Way, we all have wells. Nobody ever informed us about not drilling wells and the potential that we should have city water. So I hope that everybody on the Selectmen's Board is fighting as hard for us to get city water as I think we deserve.
I can rest assured, from where I come from, I want to see a line run up for the people on Breakfast Hill. That's where I'm coming from. That's what I'm pushing for, and I believe that's what the rest of the board is pushing for. No matter what else they do at Coakley, I would like to see a line run up Breakfast Hill.
I can give you a little update on that. The MTBE fund that you're talking about, which is the source, that is going to be administered by a committee that is being formed in the Senate. Okay, that I can tell you is going to have its organizational meeting on September the 7th up in Concord. I will be on that commission as the designee of the Executive Director of Fish and Game Department. So I'm going to be there.
Not as Greenland's representative?
No, I'll be there for Fish and Game. But the point is, that committee is being formed as of September 7th. It's organizing. That doesn't mean that we're anywhere near a point of decision. And I think it's important to sort of step back a little bit and take a look at the process that still has to happen. The process that still has to happen, there's been a proposal made to that particular committee for one sort of theoretical design that would take public water from Greenland Well that goes right now to the top of Breakfast Hill Road. It would extend that line down Breakfast Hill Road, loop it back down Lafayette Road to connect into an existing Portsmouth water line. And the advantages of that particular concept is that it would provide a looping so that you could run water in either direction, it would improve pressure, and it would serve the greatest number of people. There would also have to be lines out to the various streets all along Breakfast Hill Road and down to the individual homes. All of those details, none of those have been engineered in any way as of yet. I believe there's potentially 237 customers. I think that's the right number. It's well over 200 anyway.
And that engineering cost is included in the request for the funds?
Yes. So the committee has to take a look at that together with all of the requests from other communities in the state. There have been no guidelines yet as to what sort of applications would be required, no guidelines as to how things could be financed, any of that. So we're a long way away from a proposal. Okay.
How long would you estimate? Years?
I don't know what to say other than I don't think it's going to be 2017, but I don't know how quickly because it all depends upon some of the things that we also don't know, which is the emerging science of these contaminants, the additional data that's being learned from additional testing as to where the contaminants have gone, where it would be prioritized as against other communities. All of those things we just don't know.
That's being reactive, not proactive.
Well, all I can say is we have, together with the City of Portsmouth, put in this initial application, which is all we can do at this point. Now, when we talk about responsibilities, the City of Portsmouth, remember also, the Town of Greenland does not have the ability to install a water line on its own. We don't physically have the capability to do that. This is a job the City of Portsmouth would have to do, because it is the water provider for Greenland. I mean, I suppose it's theoretically possible that we can do it, but considering we don't have any public works department, we don't have the capability to design it, we don't have the capability to run it, any of that, this really is for the City of Portsmouth to do. And so part of what we want to do is continue the discussion with those city officials. It's very important here, as they are changing their rules about how comment is coming into them, and I'm sure you've been reading that in the paper too, that somehow we keep this issue in the forefront. I can tell you during all the years that I've been a selectman, I've never seen an elected official from the City of Portsmouth in this building. Is that fair?
I have, but not a lot.
Yeah, very rare.
Yeah.
So it's not easy to get their attention, and it's not easy to get them to come on and cooperate with things. We are trying to do that. We want to do that, to see if we can move this particular proposal forward. All I can tell you is that the organizational meeting is happening on September the 7th. We'll know more, and as soon as we know more, we'll report everything to you.
Did I understand that you're on the commission, or that you're a part of the committee? Or
I will be there representing the executive director of Fish and Game. So I'll have a seat at the table.
okay, so are you a part of the commission?
Yes,
Okay.
as that designated.
Will anybody be there representing the town of Greenland?
Again,
Yes.
we have not yet organized, so I
Right,
don't know.
well,
that-
Greenland, it's on our agenda later in the meeting. I did receive a letter requesting that the Board of Selectmen ratify or put somebody representing the town of Greenland on two different committees. The Water Committee as well as the
long range.
the Long Range Committee as well as the Seacoast Cancer Cluster Commission.
Yeah, this is
And there's
third.
two different ones, right?
3.
All right, the state sent us two at this
Exactly.
point.
The cancer cluster one.
Yeah.
And then also the long range drinking water advisory.
Yeah, Seacoast Commission on Long-Term Goals and Requirements for Drinking
The
Water.
one that I'm talking about is different. This is the one that's actually part of DES under RSA 485F.
Oh, okay, yeah, they didn't, these are the two that we need.
But that's the group that will be administering the NPV money.
Under DES?
Yes, it's their statute, 485F, section 4.
So DES oversees
It's in their
the
statute.
fund, the MTBE?
This is an advisory board to DES because, of course, all public water systems have to be approved by DES.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Don, I'm Cheryl's husband. I'm sure Attorney Sullivan represents the town of Portsmouth and the Copley Group, which I find disturbing. It's a conflict of interest. But that aside, I'm sure he's aware that the town of Portsmouth has the biggest liability in the contribution to the land, the dumping and all that. I would remind them of that.
Oh,
They
yes.
are the biggest- they are the
He's
biggest
been at the different meetings that,
So, you know, but under the hardball, overall, that is gonna, I can't see how that's gonna work if they have the biggest liability.
You're absolutely right that in all of these negotiations, we have to take it one step at a time. They understand what their potential liabilities are. They understand that they are the essential provider of water. Trying to find a balance between those two things and obtain the necessary resources to move you forward is where we're trying to be.
We're trying to be the squeaky wheel as much as possible.
Yep.
You know, it's,
I think we need to start squeaking a lot louder.
And if I could just add to that, I didn't mean to interrupt you earlier, but I would like, I think, would like clarification as to whether or not it's mutually exclusive to have remediation by pump versus the water line? Are they mutually exclusive? Can we have both? And in which order? I don't want to feel that it's one or the other.
And I think the answer to that is we're talking about two different things. Part of it is what's happening on the site itself, within the Coakley landfill itself, and that's the remediation part. The fact that essentially the poison has escaped, that's a different sort of damage. And that to me is something different. That's why it's being looked at differently. Nothing in that record of decision from 1992 or 1993 deals with this contaminant, deals with these emerging concerns, or deals with what's happened to your properties. So they're different. They are not the same issue.
Okay, so my question is, does that mean if you get one, you don't get the other? If you get the pump, you don't get the water?
I don't think that naturally flows at all. They're two different processes, completely different. I don't think that an answer to one means an answer to the other. For example, I also think that if the water line goes down, that doesn't mean that they won't be required to do pump and treat. It's a completely different issue.
But it also doesn't mean if they pump, we don't get the water.
No, I don't think that's the case.
Go ahead.
Liza McGuckin, 10 Stone Meadow Way. We were out there for a bit waiting, and I read the minutes from the last select board meeting, and it said actually that if there was a pump and treat station, it was stated in this meeting, we most likely would not get the funding.
I stated that was incorrect. I am not an engineer. I have said it to 30 people that have already emailed me or called me about that.
Okay.
And it's also in the newspaper.
I had some time because you were kind of busy in here, so I was waiting outside, so I just wanted to check. Okay. I have another question though, going back to Cheryl read from the article. If I can read over your shoulder, Cheryl.
The op-ed.
The op-ed, I'm sorry, about, because I don't know, it says natural attenuation, however, required deed restrictions on properties around the landfill to ban the use of wells, which did not happen. Correct.
Okay, that's not entirely accurate.
Right.
The reason for that is you have, if you think of it, the landfill area itself, and then there are properties that border the landfill. Okay? The town, for example, has a 50-acre parcel that directly borders the landfill. That does have deed restrictions on it. It does. We signed them.
The code, some of them, it did not happen on all of them because some of the property owners failed to reach monetary agreements with the Coakley Group. The Coakley Group had to pay the abutters for taking away that land right. And so some property owners did not reach a financial agreement with the Coakley Group, so they would not put that into their deed.
In addition, when you go back to it, that comes out of the 1992-1993 record of decision.
Yep.
And so that was based upon the facts of what they knew in 1992 and 1993 as to who was affected, as to who they were even
Right,
talking
and that
to.
list was much, much smaller.
Yes. So when you think of all the properties that we believe could potentially be affected today, that's a much larger group than they knew to be affected in 1992, 1993.
Right, which is how the town acquired our property, because that was just let to go to tax deed instead.
Yes.
We didn't own it before.
Right.
Can you explain that a little bit? That was a little
The
confusing.
property owner that owned the town's parcel stopped paying the taxes on it because of this. And so it just lapsed, the deed restriction went on, but it just lapsed to the town ownership by tax deed. So the town has quite a lengthy record of litigation and legal research before they would even vote to accept it, not knowing the future of it.
Go ahead, Joyce.
Jillian Lane, 25 Falls Way. I would like some clarification. You're explaining that Coakley Landfill Group bought out some of the properties from owners, and then somehow those owners didn't make requirements in their deed that they established for restrictions on wells. Can you further explain that? That didn't make a lot of sense.
Coakley Group didn't buy out the owners. Coakley Group paid some properties for the deed restriction of not withdrawing water.
Okay.
The ownerships did not change.
So, and I don't know who those are. I think it's in the record of decision.
Right, that goes so far back, and it was only within like a
I
very
believe it
small
was more on the
circle.
Northampton side as well. So I think that information is public and it's in the record of decision. I don't know which properties.
Right, I want to say it was mostly Northampton.
But the deed restriction was put there for a reason, and to be able to buy that reason away doesn't seem right.
No.
I mean, it just doesn't seem right.
I guess the question is, how did it get lifted? If they were restricted, how did that go away and homes were
for
developed?
example, no. For example, in the town's parcel. If you went to do a title search on the town's parcel, you would find a document from the EPA and also from DES that indicates that that property is seriously restricted in the sense that you can extract no groundwater from it.
Right.
Okay, that's on record at the Registry of Deeds.
What about the developed, we are all residents of developed deeds that were lifted and then developments were built. What happened to those deeds? How were we able to install 287
The
wells?
restriction was never put on those properties, and those properties were considered too far away at the time.
Okay,
That's
so
right.
it's based on what they knew historically about the
At
site
that
time.
time,
There were
yes.
never deeds placed.
Correct.
And who would have, it would have been New Hampshire DES that was responsible for
Determining it,
or
EPA.
EPA?
The EPA administers that site under that federal law.
Right. So that's misleading, that statement.
That's
in that article is
misleading. What has happened over the years, in the 25 years or so, that circle of the groundwater zone management has been adjusted, changed, widened, different shapes. But the initial deed restriction stuff was on its first circle.
Any other questions?
No, I just had a point I'd like to make, that they talk about the 70 parts per trillion for the PFCs. And there's other states, several other states in the country that have lowered it for health reasons. And that's why I think it is imperative to move this along as quickly as possible. I understand that this isn't something that's going to happen next week, next month, and like you said, not in 2017. But we don't really even know if 70 parts per trillion is a healthy level. And what if all of a sudden they did research and they found that 7 was the healthy level? And that's why I think it's so important not to drag our feet, to be more than just a squeaky wheel. I mean, we're talking about a basic human requirement for life, which is water. And even though you get bottled water, you're still running a dishwasher, you're still taking showers, everything, revolves around water. So I think that's just another important issue that we need to remember, that who's to say that 70 parts per trillion is safe? And at least with the public water, that has to be regulated. So if we have that and then all of a sudden, it says that there's a reading of 20 and then the level goes down. But with private wells, we could just say, tough luck, Cheryl, go do something about it. But I think it's really important that we get public water and we get it quickly.
Go ahead, Joe.
Jillian Layton, 25 Falls Way. First thing I want to say to you is at the PFAS conference in Boston, there were scientists that got up and you talked about emerging science and said, we are not seeing a difference in health effects at 1 part per trillion to 70 parts per trillion. Health effects are seen as low as 1 part per trillion. So that is absolutely scientifically what they are seeing. So there is no safe level that we should be consuming, and that's the latest science. That's what they're reporting at the conference in Boston. And I think we all know that part of the reason why we have a dozen residents here is because I left last week slightly alarmed by Karen's comment that if the remediation changes, you will not get municipal water. And I think what fueled that concern for me was the lack of response from the selectmen in Karen's statement. And that lack of response validated that statement for me. And I left here thinking, oh gosh, this is the way they feel about the situation. If the remediation changes, we're not getting water, and tough luck. And so I would like you to understand that that was my experience as an advocate and a resident. So I went to my community and said, okay, I'm really worried about this. We all need to get active and let the selectmen know just how strongly we feel about this, that this is what needs to happen. And there's many reasons why I think this needs to happen. The first reason is we need to stop impacting groundwater flow with the wells, and that's something I've talked about from the very beginning. And we have all of these irrigation systems that are pulling not only our drinking wells, but irrigation systems, and it's having an impact, there's no denying that. Secondly, our property values have been impacted, and there's no denying that. They were impacted a year and a half ago when a double rare pediatric cancer cluster was reported, and Copley became the center of the conversation online. You know, that happened. That's the reality of what we are all living with, and you're seeing homes up for sale on Breakfast Hill Road that keep getting reduced and keep getting reduced because people are concerned about this. And so if we want to protect property values, municipal water is the only solution to that. And so I feel strongly as a resident, it's for me about health. For me, number one, it's about health. But I know for many people, this is our most important investment that we make in our lives, is our homes. And the town needs to get behind it for that reason too, that we want to protect the residents from that perspective and our investments in this town and for our families. And that's a legitimate concern for many, many people.
It's a blight on the town. Also, that one side of the town is painted.
Right.
Yeah, right.
And so I would like you to know that, and so that's how I left this meeting last week feeling, was Karen made that comment, nobody corrected her, and I went home to say, oh, this is what we're left with.
That's, you know.
Right, and I have apologized, I told you that night, when you emailed me.
No more assumptions.
No more assumptions.
Right.
No more, but facts,
Right.
that's all you're gonna get.
Right.
You know, I got some very rude comments as well.
But, you know, just let me say that, you know, for as the whole board, we're not all going to get into this thing. We have elected Paul and Karen to spearhead this because you get too many people in there. It gets very, very, very confusing. So, you know, when we get questions from people like you, we ask you to go to Paul or to Karen because they coordinate, and then they're the ones that are spearheading it. It's an organized way of doing it. It's the best way of doing it. And we can't all be on top of this thing, even though we all talk about it every single week. We don't let it slide under the table. We really don't.
Would it be possible for Karen to explain why you had that thought?
Because, and I actually had that thought from the very first meeting that was held at Bethany Church back 2 years ago when we first started talking about this. And they explained the attenuation, and they explained that the initial thing had been pump and treat, and if we had gone with that, we wouldn't be in this problem. And if they can contain the chemicals on site, that's the ideal situation. So my assumption, and I agree, it's an assumption again, is if they're contained on site and they're pumping and treating on site, they're not going to be pulled off site.
And that's another reason, that's another thing that, you know, I've been in this, you know, consistently for a year and a half. And so what I know and what I've heard tends to be greater and more than most people. And one of the problems with the municipal water issue at large is that there's been a tremendous amount of reassurance to the public from New Hampshire DES for a long time. This can't be attributed to Copley. This isn't related to Copley. Whatever's in your well has nothing to do with Copley. And like I mentioned at the last meeting, all of a sudden they've changed their tune and they're saying, yes, we have a serious surface water contamination issue from Copley. And something else that I was told by Drew Hoffman from New Hampshire DES was in a question about how is it that the attenuation that was originally selected for the site of natural attenuation for these, you know, contaminants that were known to break down in nature, how can that still be effective for PFCs that we know are never going to go away? And what Drew Hoffman told me was the way they will attenuate is to disperse. And there are thousands upon thousands of PFCs that have been detected on site at Copley, and they expect them to disperse. And so you're talking about surface water getting cleaned up, but that has nothing to do with the groundwater that is underneath the dump that we draw from to our wells. And so it's a real concern, and it's something that I know that you're all working on it, but I want to implore you to consider what it feels like as a resident to know this and to be told, but we have to wait and see, and there are a lot of factors. And I just am hoping that we are exhausting every angle to try to find a way to get us this water as soon as possible.
And I guess what I'd like to say, first of all, I apologize too. I wasn't quick enough on the uptake last time when Karen made the statement. I think I heard it the way she meant it. based upon the assumption. So I didn't take it the way that you took it, so I apologize I didn't. But the other thing I want to mention to you too, understand it isn't just the select board here, but it's the planning board too. Because we know we're going to have to make some changes over in that section of town. Because anytime that you bring in something like a municipal water line, if that were to happen, you know that at that point, the land that is open, all of a sudden now becomes potentially developable because you no longer have to have the separation between a well and a septic system. And if that if that happens and there's more demand out there, not only does it change that neighborhood, it changes the whole town. And so you really need to focus on the planning board as much as you need to focus here, okay? Because there may be some overlay district, there may be some other controls that could be proposed in your particular area which would be more protective of your properties. You need to come in and let the planning board know that you want to see that happen, okay? And so we are now in what we would call ordinance season. Okay, but we started Labor Day and it has to be proposed before December. Now is the time to come in and let the members of the planning board hear you. You know, so that these things, I've been doing my best over the summer to make sure that they understand that these issues have to come forward. And now is when we start having public meetings and having proposed ordinances and getting comment. Now is the time to get just as active there as you are here.
Are you telling me you're trying to sing me?
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, Amy Miller, 19 Stone Meadow Way. Thank you guys for everything that you're doing. I know it's on the forefront of your mind, and you know we're just concerned because, like I said, we just feel like we're tainted over there, and we have a big mark on our properties. But anyways, along with going to the planning board meeting, well, first of all, when was the last time you met with anyone from Portsmouth, or when was the last meeting attended on behalf of Greenland?
For the two of us, it was June, I think.
It was when we signed the letter,
Was that June?
maybe.
Okay.
But yesterday, I met with Paul Apple and Mike Magnet.
By the way, that's the town administrator of Northampton and the town administrator of Rye.
Right, to discuss it as well. And spent this afternoon listening to the Coakley Landfill Groups meeting that was held on Friday in Northampton.
Okay.
And when would you suggest to us to go to Portsmouth and be a presence there? That's not the suggestion?
I don't know if going to the meeting is necessarily the way, but when these issues come forward and we see things reported in the paper, your comments on social media, your comments in the paper, the one that brings out more facts. For example, that we know that in Portsmouth there's a substantial number of their citizens who believe that this is not their problem in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
Okay.
And even their residents want the whole problem to be Coakley's problem. Even though, right, well, it's only 51% of it.
Right.
So they want it to be completely Coakley and cut their expense in half. When we talked about this water line, we are not involving Coakley. This is only being done through the city of Portsmouth and hopefully the MTBE money. And that was at the recommendation of Senator Morse, because if we involve Coakley, we're opening up to litigation that's going to be for years. So we're not talking to Coakley about this water line.
So they wouldn't pay anything?
No.
Well, let's say that-
MTBE money would, and then once it's said and done, and the water line is in, then the board could decide to recoup Greenland's costs or
Let's
whatever.
be careful on the assumption there too. Now, when we say that, what we are saying is simply, when we are going to the state committee that we've talked about, it is the city of Portsmouth and the town of Greenland as applicant.
Correct.
Okay. That does not mean that either one of us later on might not have some other claim against the Coakley landfill group that would be litigated in some other way.
Right.
That's
Right.
not saying that. But
Yeah.
we are saying, when we went to this committee, it's the two of us as an applicant.
Right, and Senator Moore said, keep Coakley out of it for now. We don't want to litigate now. Let's get you this money, let's get things rolling, deal with responsible parties later.
And as you say, and I think we agree, try to reach this remedy as quickly as we can.
Go ahead.
Art Hoffman and Red Oak Drive. Paul, what I wanted to ask you, just for an understanding of the whole process of municipal water and the water that we currently are using in Red Oak. I've heard that there are some issues with the water, the municipal water in Portsmouth, and that was brought to out in the public there. My point that I'm trying to make is that it's easy to find a problem with municipal water much easier than all of the different types of septic or wells that we have. Like in one area may be this, and another area may be that. And wouldn't it be more direct and a better tool of assessment of the drinking water through municipal water than how do you solve all these different variables of all our different types of drinking water? Is that clear?
Yes, and I think that comment really is the basis of why this application was made. Because you're right, if you can control the source and reduce the number of variables, then it's easier to assure people what it is that's coming through the pipe into their home.
Right.
You're absolutely right. Now, so far as Portsmouth is concerned, they are a complicated water system. They have multiple sources that come out from outside of Portsmouth. Inside Portsmouth, really, they have just the water sources on the old Pease Air Force Base, which are presently, I think, shut down, and they're in the process of developing a plan for filtration.
They're still using one that's near Pease, and they have one well in Portsmouth on the other side.
There's the Sherburne well.
I think that's what it's called.
Yes.
And then they have Greenland and Madbury.
Right, okay. So the point is, the Portsmouth system is complicated. The proposal they have is to take water from the Greenland well, which is also part of their system, and take that water and use it to serve this particular proposed loop. And that's really all we know at this point, because it's been designed only at a conceptual level from an engineering point of view, not in any way to detail.
But no matter where that water is, once it goes municipal, we know what type of water we're
Right, it goes through their treatment plant.
Right,
Yes.
that's what I think the selling point, and I think you've said that, they're aware of that. But I think it would certainly make us feel a lot better knowing, because we're all in different variable rates. We don't know what 3 blocks away or 4 blocks away what they're drinking.
Yes.
So.
Very true.
Okay, anybody else have anything they'd like to say? Okay. Thank you. Thank you for coming here. This is great. First time we've had an audience like this in a long time.
No, it's December, right? Wasn't this the last big one? When we opened the door, the line was all the way down the walkway.
And I think Stone Meadow Way will not change its name.
We already changed our number.
Yeah. So you understood why it would take so long.
We were out there, we're like, sorry, guys.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, guys, it doesn't matter. Thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't want to burst their bubble that bad, but.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you all for
I'm rubbing off on everybody.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to do
Jesus,
You can't win, you can't win.
Thank you for listening and helping.
You're welcome. Okay, review of town administrator's bi-weekly report. All right, we've got several items here. We've got, let's start off with the Parker driveway.
Yep, and that is for FYI, it's in the back of your packet, the decision from the hearing that was held. Mr. Parker had appealed his denial to access from Post Road. The hearing was held, the report came back, he was still denied his access from Post Road. The hearing officer has recommended that the hearing officer looked at the potential of him accessing from the private drive now known as Spruce. and recommended that that's what he used, and they were going to amend the driveway permit that had it for 4 properties, I believe, off Spruce to make it 5.
Okay. What is our next?
We have no next
No
step.
course of action?
No,
from us?
now Mr. Parker can come to the board and request access to build a home off of Spruce or Stearns, whichever he chooses.
Okay, all right.
Well, he may not even have to come for Spruce because it's a driveway off of a Class 6 road. So does he need special permission?
No, if he chose the building inspector to give him a permit.
Today for Spruce.
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's see, we've got the budget process
Yep.
underway.
The decisions have, the letters have gone out for departments to get busy.
Good.
And they're due September 15th. They were all given a month.
Okay. All right, let's see, we've got irrigation systems on the fields that have been vandalized.
This happened a couple years ago as well, that Paul was going out to the fields and finding the irrigation shut off. Sometimes the timers were set so that the fields were being flooded. So this time, all 3 fields had the electricity and the timers shut off. He doesn't know when it happened. He knows that he noticed it within a week or so when he noticed the fields starting to get brown. And based on the time of year, he's like, this shouldn't be happening. And so what he's done at this point is rekey, for convenience, all of the rec fields and buildings have been keyed alike with padlock. So that one key, you could get into the field or that building, depending on which one you use, because the coaches moved all around. At Maloney and Caswell, the irrigation systems are in separate buildings that initially had been padlocked with that same, basically magic padlock with the master key. He has changed the padlocks on those 2 buildings now to separate keys that he's the only one that has the key to.
Okay.
There's no need for anyone to get into the irrigation buildings. I don't know if Caswell's been completed yet. He had to get a hold of Sarah Olson, who didn't rent tennis courts, but she still had access to a key and was still keeping tennis equipment in there.
Okay.
So he was going to try and get a hold of her to say, get your stuff out, so that he could change the lock on that one. The only building that he hasn't been able to do too much with it yet is Crasco. Crasco, the electrical for the irrigation is in the cement building, which lots of people have to get in and out of that. They use it for the school board. And concessions occasionally, but mostly the school board. And then the timer for the irrigation is in the lower field, where they keep all the bases and field dragging and all that.
Okay, so we can isolate that.
He can't at Crasco. That's the thing. And so what we've sent out to the rec committee, I talked to Sharon to find out how many people have keys. Who actually needs keys to Crasco? There's lots and lots of keys out for recreation for the field gates, which is all the same key. And all the coaches need the field gates to close the gate or open the gate before games.
Do we need any type of cameras? They're pretty inexpensive now.
Right, I mean, last year we had a fine year, the year before there was this monkey business stuff going around, and the same year we had like pieces of metal pipe were thrown in the middle of fields, and he was hitting them with a lawnmower, breaking blades. There was a clear, almost like sabotage going on 2 years ago, and now this is the first time he's brought anything to my attention.
Is there a way to put a locking cage over the irrigation controls at Crasco?
No, because they're actually inside that building. It's on the electrical panel that also controls the field lights and the scoreboard lights.
So we can't cage it off?
No. That's the only one that Crasco, we really can't narrow it down.
Without doing some electrical work to separate it?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, we'll see what happens from here. I guess you've done what you can do for Tom somebody new.
Right, and the next thing is to change all of the keys and then issue them out, all right, Rec, you have these 10 keys, do not make copies. Because it's a padlock key, it's not one that was non-duplicatable. So we don't know how many have been made. It's just a
Did you say
shame.
there are a load of those keys out there?
I'm sure that every coach
How
doesn't
many
turn their
keys do you
key
think are out
in.
there?
I would bet for the rec fields, probably 20. Because different sports,
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Lacrosse, football, soccer.
Exactly.
Softball, baseball.
and
Is there
for
any way we can
convenience, it was all
use
made
that?
with the same key.
Well, I think we're gonna have to contact rec committee directly and ask for their cooperation and see if they can rein it in and get it under control,
Right, and I have been talking with Sharon about this.
so that they can work with their folks and their coaches and rein it in and get it back under control.
Right, because it's obviously somebody that has a key.
Okay.
Or, a wayward teenager of somebody that had a key, who knows?
But at least it was merely turned off, it wasn't vandalized.
Correct.
So more likely it was an adult.
Relocked as they left, so.
Yeah, more likely it was an adult who wanted to use the field while the irrigation was running.
Possibly, but all three were done the same night.
Yeah. Okay, so.
Yeah, and 2 years ago, it was the opposite way, is they changed the timing so that it ran for a ridiculous length of time. And we've discovered that faster because the fields were all flooded.
Yeah, we just have to contact rec and say, please do your best, get it under control.
Right.
We can do that.
Yes, absolutely.
Excellent. Rail trail, $176,000.
Yes, and the rail trail, I attended the meeting on this on Friday. Some of the towns along the rail trail are really pushing to get this going through really fast. You guys need to sign this agreement because there's a CMAQ grant that's been approved that's got a lot of money for certain towns to build this trail and build it, and they will come. Other towns don't have as much knowledge about it. The meeting I attended, they started talking about a lot of stuff, and I'm like, the last meeting I heard about this was like February of 16. They're like, oh yeah, that was the last meeting. And now it's like full speed ahead, but the agreement that they sent, and I put a copy of it in the packet, is horrible. It's horrible. The state will own the trail once they get possession of it from PNM. But and the state CMAQ money will build most of it. Greenland's share of about 1.5 miles is only the $176,000. But Greenland assumes all liabilities, maintenance, storms. And in Greenland's case, the rail trail goes right along the perimeter of Coakley, where we have signs posted, danger, danger, don't drink the water. And when I mentioned that, they were like, well, the equestrian stuff ends. Oh, the equestrian stuff doesn't end until Northampton. Yeah, so they could still bring horses through in Greenland. And I'm like, and the horses aren't going to drink the water?
Right.
Yeah, there's like major issues. Seabrook is ready to roll, and they've done a lot of their work, so they're really pushing. And RPC is the one that's working on this, Rockingham Planning Commission, and they are trying to get towns to sign these memorandum of agreements as a group so that PNM's value is lower. The state has offered like $3 million, or it has like $3.4 million for it. They offered $3 million to PNM. PNM has had appraisals done, and their much higher value is selling each individual segment individually. And so the point of this meeting was to keep all these towns working together with like one memorandum of agreement that is signed by all the towns with addendums for each page, each town, so that PNM can then only sell it as the contiguous, which reduces the value.
All right, so where do we stand?
At this point, I would recommend we do nothing. Pan Am hasn't even turned it over to the state yet. And let the big towns argue it.
The way this works, because it's a former rail corridor, the state is interested in buying it as a corridor and keeping it as a corridor. Okay. And so what they do is, under their congestion mitigation air quality, which is CMAQ, they are able to sponsor trails for non-motorized use. Now, that's the other thing.
Yeah.
It has to be non-motorized use.
Right.
Which means no OHRVs, no ATVs, no motorbikes, no anything, which becomes a significant enforcement responsibility for the police.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the state is interested in keeping it as a corridor primarily for utilities. Okay, and it's possible that a rail line could go back in there in the future.
But that they considered was very unlikely for this particular line.
Yeah.
Pan Am has abutters along this line that are willing to pay more for those sections to add to their own properties.
Yeah, primarily in Hampton Seabrook, I think.
They don't want the Copley landfill.
I think that was probably safe. But anyway, yeah, I would say let the state own it as a real corridor.
Right. At this point, they set up different committees of different groups to work together from all these municipalities. So I will be working with Mike Magnet from Rye, Paul Apple from Northampton, only on the memorandum of understanding, trying to change a lot of the language away from liability for municipalities.
Good luck.
Right, and that's the thing is, it's a standard.
It's what they do with every sidewalk they ever build.
Yeah. So the three of us are going to work together. We're going to meet in 2 weeks to take away all the liability language and create that as a draft that towns would be more likely to accept. And it'll go back to the state and they'll...
Okay. All right. The Boston Post came.
Yes, Janet returned the Boston Post cane that was awarded to her mother not too long ago, and she brought the cane back last week. What we did look at is who the next, Marge and I had already gone through to see who the next oldest was, which is Dr. Elmer Sewell. He is 99. I talked to his daughter, Janet Tibbetts, to see if he would be interested in the cane, holding the cane. Oftentimes residents want nothing to do with it. You know, they consider it omens or whatever. She said that she asked her father and he said he would be honored. She said, tell me when and we'll have him there.
Okay. Does anybody know Dr. Sewell here?
Yeah.
You guys do?
And the next one after that is Murray McNair, your neighbor.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we get somebody that knows him to head up this, giving this cane to him. Who knows him?
Right, well, she will bring him to a selectmen's meeting.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Let's do it
He's
next
still
time.
out and about.
All right. Okay,
Yeah.
good. And do you know him pretty well?
Well, I don't know him real well.
Do you know him pretty
my
well?
mother-in-law.
I don't know him at all.
You don't know him? How about you?
I know him pretty well.
You know him? All right, you want to head up the...
Well, he's coming here.
Yeah, he'll come here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll work with his daughter, because that's actually the current use release we have in here as well.
So we'll let you do
the day after Labor Day and have that calm people down.
Right.
Not the meeting, not the second public hearing.
Right. Okay, so Chip will do the presentation.
Yep, and we'll do up the same type of plaque,
Is that gonna be on the 5th of September?
No.
No.
No?
Why would we do that?
Because he'll have a cane to beat off.
Because he's coming.
That's like, well, we'd have an audience for him. He just
It
wouldn't.
might have a calming effect on the whole.
It might have a calming effect,
Okay.
I'll talk to his daughter.
Next is the legislative committee appointments.
Okay.
We need to appoint someone to represent Greenland on the
Yes.
Seacoast Commission on, and I'm just going to abbreviate, LTGRDW.
I have a question. We put anything out on the website asking for volunteers? Or?
No, I didn't,
Which Karen and I talked about.
because I wasn't quite sure on, the initial thing came as an email to me, please accept this email as official notice of your appointment. And then I got the next one a few minutes later, 2 minutes later, to another committee, and I'm like, whoa, no. And then, so I read the bills themselves, and it doesn't say that it must be the town administrator of Greenland. It says a representative of the town of Greenland appointed by the governing body. So you guys pick. I did check with Martha Wassel today on the Seacoast Cancer Cluster Investigation meeting committee, because she had been on the prior one.
Yep.
If she would be interested, she said absolutely.
Okay, let's just do that right now, right? I'll ask for a motion to appoint Martha Wassel.
I move to appoint Martha Wassel as Greenland's representative on the Seacoast Cancer Cluster Investigation Statutory Study Committee.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
So if you're not on that committee, you're on committee number 3.
Number 3. Yeah.
Would you want to be committee number 2?
This one's not so bad because it goes out of existence in 2018.
Right.
And,
And you already work in Concord.
yes, so that's,
Not that I'm hinting.
no, that's okay, but I would be there to be around it, so.
Excellent. I'll entertain a motion again, Jim.
I move to appoint Paul Sanderson as Greenland's representative on the Seacoast Commission on long-term goals and requirements for drinking water.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
I'll say,
Okay. Thank you, Paul. All righty.
I will send those letters in tomorrow to Concord.
All right, let's move on to the MS 434.
This is the revised estimated revenues, which is the last step required now from the town for our tax rate setting. I'm still waiting to see, the school hasn't filed their DO 25 or their revised revenues yet. But then as soon as that's done, we're ready for our tax rate. You review the revenues for September 1st, and then we can again make another adjustment at the tax rate setting, which we may not need to. But this is increasing the anticipated revenues by $155,000. The key one is a building permit for the storage, the Bluebird storage. Mr. Marquez has worked up their building permit fee, and it's going to be over $80,000. And we had estimated $90,000 for the year, and we're on target to hit the 90. This is an additional, so I didn't add in the full 80. I added in another 50 on building permits to still be enough, be conservative enough, not that we don't go over. And then I worked with the town clerk on the amount for motor vehicles. So we increased that a little bit, not a lot, based on what's happening. So the revised revenues would be $2,284,503. And it's all broken out in this form.
All right, great. Any comments?
Oh, the big reduction was in land use change tax. We had estimated that at $125,000 because I was expecting all of CV Way to come out of current use this year. And it's taken so long that it doesn't look like that. It's down to 20 because we do have one tonight for the one lot adjacent to CV Way for Mr. Sewell's daughter, Dr. Sewell's daughter, who subdivided off a 5-acre lot at the same time. So that is being released.
Okay.
But I don't know if anything on CV Way will happen before year end.
Okay.
So with those ups and downs, it was a net of 155.
Any other comments? Chester, you want to make a motion?
Oh, yeah. I make a motion to move to approve the 434 revised estimated revenues in the amount of $2,284,503.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye. Motion passed. Transfer station call list.
Okay, we had requests for 2 residents that want to serve on the transfer station call list. Paul Hayden has met with them and recommends that they be added to the list. And the names are Hugh McIntyre and Anthony Brackett, Tony Brackett.
Okay. Any comments?
They're basically become employees on call that when there's a vacancy.
Okay.
Called.
The only question I have is how many of our people are now trained solid waste operators the way they need to be?
All of the regularly scheduled ones are.
Okay, so these folks could be called in and there'll always be an SWO working with them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, entertain a motion.
I move to approve the addition of Hugh McIntyre and Anthony Brackett to the transfer station call list.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Tax deeding property.
Well, we've got 2 deeds. One that we're definitely going to talk to Karen about it. This one is the estate of Caswell. It's on Tuttle Lane, and town has a little bit. It's a narrow strip of property. I think it's probably.
Yeah, they have the they have tax cards and tax maps.
Yeah, and they've just not been paying the taxes because they wanted the town to take it. So that's basically what we've done. We've prepared the deed, and if you approve it, we'll record it, and the town will.
Right. It was owned by 3 different relatives. 2 of the relatives had signed over their share to the town, but the 3rd person on the deed has been of whereabouts unknown.
Don't know.
And the family doesn't know where she is. It was a wife that was, then there was a divorce and a new family, and so they said, all right, I said, we can't take it. So they're like, all right, what if we stop paying the taxes for 3 years? It's like $16 or something.
Yeah, it's a ridiculous amount of money. It's a small
So-
list of the land.
Yeah, so we've been carrying that forward.
Along there, so we want to get it off the books. The other one is a property on 61 September Drive. And these people are habitual. All the letters I've sent them, certified mail, they accepted none. So I sent them snail mail through the mail.
And
tracked it, and I know they received it, but they still never respond to anything. So how it came about was this person came into the town hall because she was also delinquent on her dogs, and I asked her what she was going to do. And she was rather indignant with me and said, well, I have property in Portsmouth and Ossipee. What do you expect me to do? I have to pay my light bill and my phone bill, and I very nicely told her, well, if you don't have a house, you won't have a phone bill or a light bill to pay. So I said, I'm going before the selectmen to deed the property next meeting. So she told me she would come in next week, which was last week. And she said, I'll bring you some money. So she brought me $2,000 in cash. So I said, so what are you going to do about the rest? That's not going to cover it. So she said that she would write me a letter if I would give her 30 days. So she brought me the letter, and which is in your packet there. And with your approval, we'll see what happens in 30 days. If she doesn't come through in 30 days, property goes.
Right.
That's my recommendation.
Yeah, and we've talked about, I think the board should accept the deed and delay recording of it until.
Right. And then I'll just
a set date.
Yeah, and then I'll let you know.
So we should take the deed and delay recording?
Yes, right. We'll hold the deed until, to see if she keeps up her end of the deal. And if she does, she does this to me every single year. I go through this.
And we had a prior tax deeding that's how we did it. The board accepted the deed and set a date. We won't record it until X.
Okay.
And then it doesn't have, we don't have to start this whole.
I think it's September 14th or 15th, somewhere around that would give her the 30 days from the date of her letter.
Okay.
So if you do accept it, holding it, I will let her know. I'll send her a letter. And Paul, maybe you have a suggestion.
Yeah, what I would say is just make it the date of our second meeting in September rather than 30 days from her letter.
Okay, the second meeting in September.
Because that way it'll be on our agenda.
See, which is the 15th.
The 15th.
So, fine.
Yeah, the 15th, that's what I did.
Make sure it goes out certified.
Certified.
Make sure it goes out ordinary.
Both ways. That's what I've done with everything with her, everything.
Okay, because obviously, you know, when you take tax deeding that way, it's a suspect title. And so you have to be able to prove every single step along the way. Oh, I don't doubt it. I'm just saying that that's where you have it. Now, you do realize also that when we accept it, okay, that we can't just immediately, we could immediately go and start eviction proceedings. I'm not sure, is there anyone in the house right now?
Yes. Oh, yes, there's a 97, her mother is 97 years old, the whole family.
It's a duplex.
And she has a child at Simmons, a daughter at Simmons College.
Okay, so we have a real problem on our hands.
Yes, we do, because she doesn't open any of her mail. She said, I don't have time. She said, I have a stack of mail like this, that's what she told me. I said, well, you better start looking. I showed her all the certified letters I get back from her that she never accepted, that have come back, and I've kept them for 3 years.
Okay, so as we just spin this out for the next couple of steps, we do this on September 15th and we accept the deed.
Okay, if she doesn't pay.
Right. At that point, because she's paid partially, you would just send her a check and refund.
Right, correct,
We would record.
right.
Okay. Is there a mortgage?
No mortgage.
Okay, which is why, that's probably why it's such a mess now, because there's no mortgagee getting on.
Exactly.
That's
the
exactly.
same. We have one other one that's always late and there's no
It's the
mortgage.
same, it's the
Same
same
problem.
thing. Every single year, it's the same two people.
Okay. And so at that point, once the town becomes the title holder, then we have to immediately insure it.
Right.
Okay. We have to, at that point, decide whether or not we're going to start eviction proceedings, which we could.
Right, or here's the rent.
Yeah.
Or what?
On the
How much
rent.
the rent is.
Collect the rent.
We're not in the landlord business.
Right.
We
We don't
would
want to be the landlord.
We would evict, okay? And then the property can be placed up for sale, you know, and it gets fair market value, and then they get back whatever minus our expenses. Now, obviously, this is a very bad deal for the family because they're paying at 18%. It's a pretty
She
expensive
just
loan.
gave me $2,000 and it didn't even pay all the interest.
Yeah.
I still have $768 or $69 in interest as of today. It's on the paper.
Yeah, so just so everyone understands, this will not get better.
No, and I begged with her to please come and talk to me. She won't respond. I said, let me know, give me $100 a month, do something, so something in good faith. Nothing. Till I happen to catch her that day that she came in to pay $100 for 2 dogs.
All right, then we'll just follow the timeline and execute accordingly.
So,
Yeah, you need motions.
you need a motion so that I know what to do.
I'm going to move to accept the tax deed for map R9 lot 3 from the tax collector.
That's Tuttle Lane.
On the condition that we will hold and not record.
This is
No,
Tuttle
this is
Lane.
Tuttle Lane. Tuttle Lane, Paul.
I'll leave the bid for you.
I have a motion and a second, all in favor? Motion passes.
I have the original, so.
Second motion, you want to?
Send him to the registry.
Yeah.
Delay the acceptance?
Yep.
Just trying to get.
Go ahead.
Make the motion.
Yeah, please, because I'm in the wrong place.
I'll make a motion, I'd like to make a motion to delay the acceptance for an additional 30 days for the tax deed for map R7 lot 39 from the tax collector.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
And just please note in the minutes that this will be placed on the selectmen's agenda for September 15th, is it? September
I think
15th?
it's September 15th.
Right behind you, there's a calendar.
That's less than 30 days.
About 15.
No, the thing was signed on the 14th. The letter was signed on the
18th or
14th.
the selectment.
Do you want to take it from the date of the letter, Paul? or-
No, it's the 18th anyway.
It's the 18th, okay.
Okay, that, just with the understanding, this will be placed on the selectmen's agenda on September 18th
Okay.
for further action.
Okay. I have a motion, I have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passes.
And I'll send her a certified letter
And regular.
and regular. Yeah, that's what I've done on everything.
And there are tenants in the house.
It's just her family.
I understand. which means that you could also direct that letter to that house.
Dwight, that's what I ordinarily do, because it's her mother,
Yeah, and it's in a trust.
and it's in a trust. It's her
Okay.
father's trust.
Okay. I'm just trying to think about where, because she's not living here.
Yes, she
Oh, yes,
is.
she
Oh,
is.
yes, she is.
Oh, okay.
She and her husband and her daughter live there, and the mother.
And the mother.
And the mother.
Okay, then
They
that's,
occupy both sides?
that's,
Yes.
Family occupies both sides of the duplex, okay.
okay, then that's the best address. Okay, fine.
And I'll send
Okay.
it with a receipt on the regular mail too, Paul. It's just
Okay.
a few dollars.
Yeah, the tax card is in your packets.
I just didn't catch up fast enough. Okay.
All right. Current use review.
Okay, this is a current use release for $17,500, valuing the property at $175,000. This is for one lot at 312 Breakfast Hill Road. It is adjacent to CV Way. It wasn't a fair market sale for me to base the fair market value on, because this is a family transfer from the Sewell family to one of the Sewells, Dr. Sewell's daughter, Janet Tibbetts.
Okay. I will entertain a motion.
I move to sign the current use release and tax collector's warrant for map R1, lot 13B, 312 Breakfast Hill Road, in the amount of $17,500.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. All right, bond approval.
This is for 64 Tide Mill Road. It's going to be the new location of Dance Innovations. It was some commercial offices, and there's a house across the street that's considered part of the same property. It's kind of dilapidated. Yeah, and that's going to, part of the planning board's approval on that was that the house be torn down.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe,
I always wondered that out.
ooh, it's in pretty rough shape.
It's all right.
And so this is accepting the bond amounts for the site construction at $121,628, landscaping $620.29, and demolition of the house on the property $15,000. These amounts have all been reviewed and recommended by the town engineer and the planning board. Yeah, and Eric is signed off.
Any comments? A motion?
I move to accept the bonds as requested by Dance Innovations for 64 Tide Mill Road.
Second. There's a motion and a second. All in favor? Motion passes. Bid results.
Okay, we've had several things out to bid. One other thing too. So bid results on paving, and I did review all of these with the road agent, so he is familiar with them all and had made the recommendations. I have one piece of paper to add into this. Okay. So for the road paving, we got two bids: Barassa Paving for $152,602. and Pike Industries at $245,175. I did receive an email today from Barassa Paving that I reviewed with the road agent. They would like to, they are recommending that we increase the bid by their bid by $6,220 to add a joint adhesive on the center line joint. It was done when we did Tidewater, and it has helped the pavement from shrinking. It's fairly new, it appears to be working. It's a DOT code that we did not include in our bid, so they did not bid it with that in it. But they are recommending that we add the $6,220 to do this center joint adhesive.
Okay.
And I think we have two issues. The first one is the bid, okay? And then once we do that, we would be free to negotiate with them to maybe make a change and add an additional spec. But I don't think we should do that before we award a bid based upon the bid between the two.
Correct.
Okay. That makes sense. Any other comments? I'll entertain a motion.
Okay, I'd like to move that we award a bid for paving to Barassa Paving in the amount of $152,602.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes.
My next motion would be to authorize the road agent and the town administrator to negotiate with Barassa Paving for a change order in an amount not to exceed $6,220 for a change of specification relating to
Joint adhesive
for the center line of the roads to be paved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. So the total on that's 158.
822.
All right,
Okay.
crack seal.
Crack sealing, only one bid was received from ABS Seal Coat of Greenland in the amount of $9,275.
It's a tough one.
Right. And seal, there's basically 3 companies that do seal coating, and we're late getting out to bid for this season because we're waiting on the Willowbrook, Great Bay Drive, east, west, what are we going to pave situation. So when Paul gave me the list to move forward, the crack sealing is limited by weather, and so the other 2 companies are pretty much, they've got their schedule.
Okay.
And this will be the first time we've used this Greenland company.
So that's a.
Yeah, it's over on Bruce Court.
Oh, it's on Bruce Court.
It's on Bruce Court.
So they took Bruce's own equipment.
Yes.
This is Andy Schleter, isn't it?
Yep.
Okay, you want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll move to award the 2017 crack sealing program to ABS Seal Coat of Greenland in the amount of $9,275.
Second.
I would like to abstain because Mr. Schleter has been a client of mine in the past.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes, 1 abstention.
I just have a question. Does that include coastal?
No, coastal is something that we talked about at the last meeting.
Exactly.
Yes, this is in addition to coastal. The coastal isn't going to look like a crack seal. The crack seal looks like, the black snakes and fills in the cracks. Coastal Way is going to be a new product that is going to look like it was paved.
That's right. I just want to know if that was the same company.
And that's actually being done next Thursday. Wednesday, Thursday. The residents were all notified today.
Yeah. Okay. Replacement window.
We received 2 bids for replacement windows. Home Depot at $648 per window for the 4 regular windows and $749 for the security door window, for a total of $3,341, and it's the Home Depot brand. And then Nick's door and window at $740 per window, including the door window, for a total of $3,700. There's repair work that needs to be done to the outside, which Paul wants to handle with a separate contract.
Okay. What windows is next door windows is?
Anderson.
My money, I go to Anderson.
Your what?
With my money, I go to Anderson. As opposed to Home Depot brand.
Well, do both of these proposed windows meet the spec?
Yes.
How about warranties?
I do not have any warranty information from Home Depot. I do have substantial information on Anderson window, but I'll have to look to see if there's any warranty. I have all their, they included the Anderson 3-fold thing on,
Okay.
that kind of stuff.
I wonder then, based upon the RFP that we put out, does the Home Depot brand, without any information or backup warranty like that, meet the spec?
Yes,
I mean, it meets the spec of size. But
it meets the spec of size and glass, the double pane, grills inside. The RFP talked about the quality of the window.
They are going to last.
Right, yeah,
Yes.
Louis, all that stuff.
yeah.
Do you want to wait to get the specs before we vote on this, or do we want to? I'm asking.
I think so.
I want to wait to
We
get
have the
the,
time on it, let's look at them side by side.
did you do that?
Since it's just the items themselves, I think we're safe to wait.
Yeah. Okay.
Get warranty and
I mean, if we find warranty for 30 days versus warranty for 10 years.
the next one is road salt. We received 2 bids, Morton Salt and Granite State Minerals, both at the same price of $53.30 per ton. It's up from last year. Last year we paid $51.13. That's pretty consistent. What I've seen road salt do is increase a couple of dollars one year, go down a couple of dollars. It fluctuates in that range. One year it was in the $70 range, so we're still at a decent price. Morton is who we have been using, and we find that their quality is a better mix. It's the Morton salt, and the board may remember the difference. We used to use Granite State because they were substantially cheaper, and they have the more of the gray salt that has some sand mixed in it. It's a brownish. Morton salt is pretty much a white salt, and the contractors have found that it doesn't clump up as much in the machine.
I find it kind of interesting that both would have the exact same bid.
Right, well, we're very fortunate because Portsmouth is a salt depot, and the price is not as much, because that's the delivered price. It's not necessarily priced as much as on the salt, it's the delivery cost. So Stratum's cost is going to be higher than the 53. And the further away you go from a salt depot, the price goes up.
I understand that part of
Did you contact our plowing contractor on this? Did you?
Our plumbing contractor?
Plowing.
Jimmy Jones.
No,
Jimmy
No.
Jones?
no,
So he doesn't have any,
he doesn't have any say. He has been the one that has told me that Morton works better. But if there was a substantial price difference between Morton and Granite, I would be looking at talking to a couple other towns to see how bad of a problem can it be, before I would make a recommendation.
all right. All right.
Right, this is very close to DOT contract price.
Mhm.
10 cents less.
Yeah, and DOT's depot is in Northampton. So it's the transportation. Alki is the one that delivers ours, and it just depends on how far they're driving it.
Okay, motion?
I move to award the salt contract to Morton's sale of salt. It should be salt, not sale.
Move to award the salt contract. Oh, Morton Salty, sorry.
In the amount of $53.30 per ton.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed.
I hate to bring this up. Are we going to have any work done on Great Bay Drive West and door work this year?
I don't know. What I did today was Underwood had sent me and Paul the easement request for construction easements for several properties on Great Bay Drive West and on Willowbrook. So I got those all printed out and mailed out to the homeowners because they can't even get the wetlands permit for either of the properties. Or the culvert replacement property without the construction easements.
Did we learn anything from this year? So time, I mean, how long it takes to get these things done. Seems like
Okay. Well, and the next part there, do we know what he's actually designed in for a replacement culvert?
I did not attend the meeting with the engineers on that because that's been home. I do have the maps of the plan for Great Bay Drive West and for Willowbrook.
Because I don't think we should be getting easements until this board has looked at the plan.
Well, these are just the access easements that doesn't matter what the plan, if we're gonna do the work, they still need to step on this person's land.
So all they're looking for now is just access. They're not trying to, they haven't even gone to the point of a construction easement.
No. These are because they're gonna need to step on their land on either side of that culvert, regardless of what size it is.
Okay. So we're all right.
It's Sterrett, and there's two on Willowbrook, one on either side of the culvert. And then on Great Bay Drive West, it was Hagner, Schwab, Brackett. Might have been all.
That should be all, yeah.
Okay. All right, any other business anybody would like to discuss?
Manifest, unless you're, let's do other things to do.
And I'll forward you what I got from Underwood that has the maps attached.
Hearing no other business, then we'll do the manifest.
Okay, we're looking for manifested record speed. Fire and Safety Revolving Fund in the amount of $71.04. Move we approve.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Motion passed.
Police Special Revenue Fund in the amount of $36,702.50. Move we approve.
Second. All in favor?
Payroll Manifest number 17 in the amount of $56,007.99. Move we approve.
second.
All in favor?
Aye. General Fund Accounts Payable, $195,949.48, including $180,000 to the school. Move we approve.
Second.
All in favor?
So it's
Motion passes. Any other business to come before the zoning report?
No, sir.
Motion to adjourn. Move to adjourn. At 9:38.
Off the record,
All in,
question.
wait a minute.
Sorry, you'll have to work.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Meeting is adjourned.
You were describing the piping.